I'm Paul Levinson, and welcome to Light On, Light Through, episode 346, my review of the Mosquito Coast, episode 2.8 on Apple TV Plus. It was put up there just today, and I think of this very special episode of the Mosquito Coast as Harry Seldon in Mexico. Now, I haven't been reviewing the Mosquito Coast all that much. In fact, I posted one general review of the first season, which I did very much enjoy, back here on, Light Through this past July. And I will put, of course, a link to it in the show notes of this episode. But the reason why I'm so excited about this new episode in the second season of The Mosquito Coast, well, those of you who've been listening to my reviews of science fiction TV series here on this podcast, even for just the past year, you'll know who Harry Seldon is. In case you don't, he's the protagonist in Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, and I think his original trilogy from the 1950s is the best science fiction ever written. Seldon is able to statistically predict the future. He invents a method called psychohistory that comes from Laplace's demon in philosophy, by the way, though Laplace is not mentioned in Asimov's stories. But what this is all about is if you were able to know everything about human behavior, capture it and put it all in some kind of mathematical form, you could see what people will be doing tomorrow or even a century from now. That's pretty heady stuff, right? By the way, there'll be spoilers ahead if you haven't seen this episode. But it might be worth your while just to read this anyway because of the Harry Seldon connection. Anyway, when I was watching this episode just earlier today, episode 2.8 of The Mosquito Coast, you can imagine how happy I was to hear Allie explain to Charlie that psychohistory, without calling it psychohistory, was how Allie's sandpiper program worked. I would have been even happier had Allie, that is the maker of this episode, given Asimov and Foundation a little shout out, but okay. It was still a sterling moment to see Allie point out a bird to Charlie in the Mexican jungle and explain that if we knew every single thing the bird had done in the past, every single scene of its life and behavior, we could reliably predict what that bird would do in the future. Now, if you think about it, that's far better than recent election polling, which has failed many times in the past few years to give accurate predictions, and that's because people could lie when asked whom they will be voting for, or they might just change their minds. The problem here is that what people say they are going to do is vastly different from what they actually wind up doing. And while we're at it, I also think Ali's explanation of his sandpiper, that's a special program that he developed in the Mosquito program, well, that was at least as good as Harry Seldon's explanation of psychohistory in the Apple TV Plus rendition of the Foundation series. I thought the first season, which is all that's been on so far, really did leave a lot to be desired. But that's a story for another day. I mean, if you're interested, check out Nobel laureate Paul Krugman's disappointment with the Foundation TV series. Krugman has long cited Asimov's Foundation trilogy and psychohistory as inspiration for Krugman's work in economics. And also, you might enjoy listening to, if you haven't already, the podcast discussion I had with two lifelong fans of Asimov's Foundation stories, Cora Boulay and Joel McKinnon. And I'll have a link, of course, to that episode of Light On, Light Through in the show notes to this episode. Well, the Mosquito Coast, now nearing the end of its second season, if you think about it, really is a kind of science fiction. And it was certainly firing on all cylinders in this episode, including in the beat-up pickup truck that Dina steals from her almost boyfriend in an attempt to get away. I keep thinking that Dina is going to wake up one morning and realize she really likes the partial paradise where she and her family now live, but it looks like that's not going to happen. Hey, here's one thing about my behavior that I can indeed accurately predict for you. I'll be back here next week with my review of the next episode of the Mosquito Coast. And here's another prediction. I doubt I'll ever find a science fiction saga I love more than Asimov's Foundation series. You know, that actually started as a series of short stories in Astounding Stories way back in the 1940s. Astounding Stories changed its name to Analog in 1960. 15 of my own science fiction stories have been published in Analog. But think about it. Some 80 years ago, before statistical projections came to play such a major role in our lives, Isaac Asimov wrote some riveting narratives in which those kinds of projections were center stage. So good for the Mosquito Coast for putting this into the spotlight. And I hope you enjoyed my review of this episode of the Mosquito Coast and its connection to Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I'll be back here soon with a review of something else that's good on television, either a movie or a television series, usually science fiction, sometimes it's mystery, detective fiction. I'll have something for you very soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay sound, and I hope you caught President Zelensky's speech that he gave to the American House of Representatives and Senate a few days ago. We still need to do everything we can to help those brave people of Ukraine get those Russian fascist invaders out of their country once and for all.
The Light on Light Through podcast.
Athens, 2042 AD. She ripped the paper in half, then ripped the halves, then ripped what was left again into bits and pieces of history that could have been. Sierra Waters had read once that, years ago, it was thought that men made love for the thrill, while women made love for the sense of connection it gave them.
Curled Up with a Good Book says, Sierra Waters is sexy as hell. You can find out more about The Plot to Save Socrates by Paul Levinson at theplottosavesocrates.com.
Paul Levinson Silk Code about an ancient biotech war raging on in secret for centuries.